Welcome to the Failure is Knowledge Podcast. Welcome to the Failure is Knowledge Podcast. I'm your host, Terrell Humphrey, and I produce over 893 podcast episodes. And I want to document the journey. In addition to that, I want to bring you along the journey so that way you can see what's possible. In addition to that, I can talk about what I'm doing, what's not working, and what can be improved from from the action that I'm taking. So if you're new to here, welcome. If you're new to this channel, if you're new to this podcast, if you're new to this live stream, welcome. Today's going to be an informative conversation because we're going to talk about focus on a problem. And I'll tell you the reason why this topic came about is because today I woke up with so much clarity behind the business, the podcast production business that I'm doing. And it was like, oh, wait, this is the clarity I was looking for. This is the focus I was striving for. This is the energy I was putting into the podcast production. And so nonetheless, we're going to go ahead and get it started. So if you're new to it, like I always say, make sure you got your pen and you got your notebook because today's going to be a powerful conversation. So let's go ahead and get into it. First thing first, my name is Terrell Humphrey. I'm the host of Failure is Knowledge Podcast. And when you focus on a problem, you have to understand there are many problems to solve. Okay, hold on. Let me come back to it. Point number one, remove all, put that in parentheses and underline it, problems. Okay, what this means is that is this, right? When I got into business and a half a decade ago, when I started Failure's Knowledge, I was really learning what I was doing, okay? Posting is a form of marketing. Communicating with people is a form of sales. Looking at your finances is a form of finances or budgeting. And I didn't understand what I was getting myself into. However, I understood I wanted to get into something, right? I didn't recognize that there are so many problems to solve. And if I was to solve all the problems, I'll be all over the place. I did a podcast the other day and it was like, you have 99 problems, but until you solve one problem, you won't be in business. And it was me telling myself that there are so many different things to solve. There are so many problems to solve. There's so many challenges to overcome. If I'm trying to overcome all of them, I'm overcoming nothing. And what this did for me is that it taught me something. It taught me that if I want to focus on a problem, I have to remove all of the problems and look at the one that I'm focusing on. So when you're looking at the one that you're focusing on, you're removing all the ones that don't really matter, all the ones that don't really provide value, or all the ones that take a lot of time to provide value for. You see, when I start to understand it, I was like, oh, I think I figured it out. What's going on, Durant? Hold on. Let me come back to the screen. What's going on, TikTok? I can't see everybody on TikTok. On Facebook, let me see who else on Facebook, Twitch, and X. Remove all problems. In other words, find something to solve. So I give you a prime example. When I was in the Marine Corps, I started to cut hair. The problem to solve while cutting hair is that a lot of service members need their hair cut. During that time, this is the great example. During that time, people, oh, by the way, sending prayers to people who are in the war or in the service who's going to war, sending prayers to all the service members, and I just want to send my prayers to you all as well. So, in the Marine Corps, you have this person, which is me. You have this person who needs a haircut. And this person don't know how to cut their hair. To cut hair. In the service, it's mandatory. Like it's not an option to not get a haircut. It's you have to get a haircut. Well, for the Marine Corps, it was every week. For all the other service members, I don't know their rules and regulations because I wasn't in the service in their branch. However, in the Marine Corps, we had to get a haircut every week. Every week. And during this time when COVID shut down, all the barbershops closed down that was out in the city. Everybody that was cutting hair at the barbershop stopped cutting hair because the world shut down. And being in the military or in the Marine Corps working for the government, that was like, hey man, y'all gotta shut down. Until we figure this out, y'all have to shut down. So that's exactly what we did. We shut down. So during this time, I was about to go to Texas. Oh, but before I was about to go to Texas, I was like, all right, cool. What does this consist of? They said, hey man, y'all about to go on Texas. Y'all about to go to Texas. So get ready for that. Get ready for that. Mentally, get ready that you are about to leave here. And I'm like, all right, cool. No problem at all. My get ready was like, all right, cool. Hold on. Okay. There are service members who are going to need a haircut. And a lot of service members don't know how to cut their haircut. What if I go buy some clippers? The clippers was like maybe, let's just say it was $29. $29 for some clippers. And I bought the clippers and then I bought some liners. It's like to line your hair, whatever case is, let's just say $50. $50. So altogether, I was probably, let's just say $80 to $100 estimating. 80. As a matter of fact, let's just say $90 estimate. So when I went to Walmart and bought the equipment, clippers, liners, and that was really it, to be honest. I start asking my friends, my guys I serve with. I was like, man, can I cut y'all hair? Hold on. I was like, hey, man, can I cut y'all hair? And they was like, yeah. I said, for real? They said, yeah. I said, man, I don't know what I'm doing. They said, no problem at all. You can learn on us. I was like, all right, cool. That's a bet. So I bought the clippers and I start cutting hair. First off, cutting hair is extremely challenging because everybody's head is different. Everybody's head shape is different. Nonetheless, the technique is the same, but I didn't have the technique. I didn't have the skills. I was trying to learn the problem that I was solving. As I was cutting hair, the haircuts came out bad. I'm talking about extremely bad. It got to a point when I cut their hair, it didn't even look like they got a haircut. It looked like I messed them up. Nonetheless, the problem that I was learning to solve is that men needed haircuts. I didn't know how to cut women hair. I didn't know how to do women hair. I decided to pick up clippers to solve a problem. It's not the fact that women hairs are not important. It's more so I'm only one person and I can solve a problem. When I bought the clippers, I learned how to solve that problem. That problem that I solved, I was learning how to cut hair. Hold on. As simple as it seems, when you focus on a problem to solve, you'll focus on a thing, a problem, like one particular solution that you could provide. What this did for me over time, when I started to really understand everything that I was doing, it made me focus. It made me focus on my craft. It made me focus on the questions I need to ask in order for me to get better. It made me focus. You see, when you're in business, you have to focus. When you're in business, you have to focus. When you're in business, you have to focus. Why did I say that 3 times? Because focus is the most challenging thing there ever is, because there's so many different ideas. There's so many different problems. There's so many different pains that you can solve. However, you have to recognize the time that you have to solve this problem. It's not the fact that every problem can be solved. It's more so you don't have the time, the money, the resources to solve every problem. Hold on. When you start to understand that the problem that you're solving is a problem that you are solving, it only consists of one. Because that one problem, many people has it. I spent $90 to get clippers and haircut or haircut equipment. Equipment to cut hair. And I made $1,000 by cutting hair. When I cut hair, I was like, man, this is different. Let me tell you why. Hold on. $90 from one investment. This right here was for the equipment. Like it literally was for the equipment. $90 is for equipment. I'm gonna put in parentheses clippers, cape, like the when you cut hair, the cape so the hair can fall on the cape. I don't know what it's called. Cape and rubbing alcohol. Let's say rubbing alcohol. ALO. And that $90 turned into $1,000. And I think I was charging, if memory serves me correct, I think I was charging like maybe $15 to $25, give or take. I'm not sure. I can't remember. However, let's just say it was $20 just to average it out. $1,000 divided by 20. $1,000 divided by 20. Calculator. Hold on. $1,000 divided by 20. That's 50 people. That's 50 people. And that's 50 people that of a problem of 50 people who had the same problem who needed a haircut. Now, some of them were repeat customers. So it wasn't the fact that the problem was all over the place. It was more so, well, this is what I'm doing. Back then, I was cutting hair and that was what I was doing. When I start to understand that you have to focus on the business that you're doing, you can't do everything. Hold on. You can't do everything because you don't have the time. You can't do everything because you don't have the money. You can't do everything because you don't have the resources to solve every problem. Well, how do I use that today? I use that today in the podcast production business by helping real estate developers build their brand through podcasting by already having the equipment. The equipment costs a certain amount of money, but it's not the equipment that people pay for. It's the brand that people lack because they have the expertise. If I focus on the problem that many people lack, that many people have, I can solve that problem for the same person over and over and over again. Now, what I learned during that time is like, hey, man, 50 clients, the 50 paying clients, I literally was in business because I was able to make money from a service that I provide. I gave a service. I got paid for the time, effort, and providing the service. Nonetheless, I started to understand that I was in business. From that, I started to understand, like, hey, man, you gotta understand what you are doing. When I started the podcast, I didn't understand what I was doing. A half a decade later, it's like, hey, man, hold on. I have a better understanding of the problem that I can solve. It's not just about talking to a camera. It's not just about putting your cameras up, getting the equipment. And I know a lot of people who just get the podcast equipment but never use it. Nonetheless, they don't know how to use it. When you get the equipment, don't know how to use it, your equipment start to collect dust. It's not the fact that the dust is the problem. It's more so you don't understand the problem that you are solving. Hold on. You see, when it starts to make sense, I'm like, hey, man, I figured it out. What did I figure out? The podcast production business consists of brand building. Branding was the problem that I was lacking. Like, I was trying to figure out what is the terminology, what are the words, how can I communicate this? The difference between cutting hair and a podcast production business is completely they provide different services. Nonetheless, it's technically the same. If I want to go help a real estate developer build their brand through podcasting, I have to go out and find them. When I wanted to cut hair, with service member, I had to go out and find them. I had to go out and put myself out there. You see, these podcast episodes, these live streams are not for anything. These podcast episodes, live streams are literally calling out my customers, are literally calling out my audience, are literally calling out the people who would like to learn from me. You see, it's not the fact that the content is important. It's more so that the brand that I'm establishing is more important. Why? Because the brand is what people lack. The brand is what people struggle with. The brand is what take a long time to develop. So now when I understand what problem I'm solving, as I start to focus on the problem, I start to put steps in place. As I put steps in place, I become more consistent. As I become more consistent, I learned how to be patient. Hold on. Check this out. I couldn't have a business. I couldn't have a podcast production business because I didn't even know the problem that I was solving. I done changed my business model so many different times. And it's like, man, when you gonna stop changing it? And I finally got to a point when it's like, hey, I finally understand it. I finally understand what I'm doing. It's not the fact that you can't solve every problem. It's more so if you focus on a problem, you can solve this problem consistently. 50 people let me cut their hair. They had the same exact problem. The same problem that they had was that they needed a haircut. The same problem that they had was they needed a haircut every week. The same problem that they had was that we can go out to the city to get a haircut. So everyone had to settle for what was around us. I tell you this, that was the best decision I ever made because it helped me focus. Now, how I use that information today is that the only thing that I'm doing is podcasts, social media, and webinars. Focus is the key because brand building only comes from you doing the work. Brand building only comes from you understanding the problem that many people have. When you recognize a problem, you found your business. When I recognize that a lot of people have the expertise, a lot of people have the knowledge, a lot of people have the experience, but no one knows who they are because they are the best kept secret. How can their brand start to be built? How can their brand be established? How can their brand become known? And it's through podcasting. It's not the fact podcasting is another form of content creation. It's actually one of the best content creation there is because you could have a 60-minute conversation and you can get so much content from this one conversation. That one conversation turns into so many different connecting points for your audience that what this do is that it helps you stand out even more. Because with Failure is Knowledge Podcast, we stand out more because we're consistent. We stand out more because we're showing up consistent every day. We stand out more because we're solving the same problem. If you haven't failed, you haven't grown. If you haven't grown, you haven't learned. You see, when you focus on a problem, you are learning the problem to solve consistently. That's the next point I want to hit on. Hold on. That's the next point I want to hit on because focus on the problem is so critical. It's so important. And when you focus on the problem, point number 2, you have to evaluate why it's a problem. Evaluate why it's a problem. And once you do this, you start to understand that you are growing. Hold on. So first point that we just went over, let me just go back. First point that we just went over is that you have to remove our problems. In other words, find something to solve. Find a problem to solve. And then when you do that, solve it efficiently, and then do it consistently. Okay. So, evaluate why it's a problem. How to evaluate if it's a problem. When I talk about this a lot, but in other words, hold on. I talk about this a lot, but it's so important to know this. It's okay. There we go. Is this? Ask questions until it make sense. And what this means, I'll spell sense wrong. SENSE. Okay. Until it makes sense. Okay. What this means is this, right? Come back to the screen. What this means is that you have to ask questions to understand if it makes sense. When I was learning about business at Action Zone, shout out to Action Zone. Action Zone is a veterans held nonprofit organization where they help service members, transition service members who's getting out, and veterans launch their business from idea concept to growing their business. So when I went through this program, they helped me understand what business I was in. As I started to learn the business I was in, I was like, what business am I in? It's not the fact that it was confusing. It was definitely confusing because I started in social media advertising, social media agencies, social media marketing, advertising, all these different things. Like I started and I was trying to figure it out. As I figured out what business I'm doing, it gave me the confidence to understand that I was solving a problem. Not just any problem, but a problem. The problem that I was solving was learning how to help people build their brand. But I didn't have the language or the simple terminology behind the problem that I was solving. How to evaluate if it's a problem, how to evaluate if other people have it, how to evaluate if it's something to put your time into. It's to go talk to people. It's to go communicate with people. It's to go ask people questions like, hey, I'm currently working on this problem. Do you have this problem? If they say yes and you proceed to ask, how is this problem causing you? Or how does this problem make you feel? You go and communicate with the people that you think that are your customers. Why this is important? Because it matters when you go and seek feedback. That is called feedback. When you go and evaluate if this is a problem, you have to evaluate if other people have it. I give you a prime example. As I'm doing different podcasts with other people and I'm communicating with other people, they use the terminology dinosaur. And I asked the question one time, like, why y'all keep saying that? What does that even mean? And they proceed to say they are dinosaurs because they don't know how to use the technology today. They are dinosaurs because they're doing the old school ways. In addition to that, they're not adapting to today's time. So you're telling me, just so I understand what you're saying, you're used to the old way of marketing, yet you haven't learned how to use social media to market yourself. Is that correct? They say, yeah. And I'm like, So in other words, if all you had to do was just show up to record and not even worry about how to build your brand, would that be beneficial? They proceed to answer the questions that was like, yes. Then I start to ask questions and I get feedback and I'm starting to understand, wait, hold on. The business I'm in is brand development. Helping real estate developers build their brand through podcasting. It's not the fact that they don't have the expertise. It's more so they are the best kept secret. Hold on. You see, hold on. Let me get back to it. When you're the best kept secret, no one knows who you are. When you're the best kept secret, you have the expertise, but no one is coming to learn. When you're the best kept secret, all your experience is tucked away in the closet. Hold on. See, in the closet, I got a canopy tent, right? What a canopy tent is this. I'll show you right quick. Hold on. I'll show you right quick. So this look like that. It look like that. Look like that. Look like that. And this come like this. This come like that. So on top, it has this. Failure is knowledge. Hold on. Failure is there we go. Failure is knowledge podcast. And what this consists of is that it's a banner right here, not a banner, but a little thing that goes around, and then like right here is the table. And right here, it says failure is knowledge. You see, if I store this tent in a way, people ain't gonna know that it exists. When I bring it out, people are able to see failure is knowledge podcast. It's not the fact that it says failure is knowledge. It's more so that the secret is out of the closet. Hold on. Let me come back to the screen because that one right there, that was actually pretty good. You see, when the tent comes out and I put it up, and you see failure is knowledge, the secret is no longer hidden. The secret is now on display. The secret is where everyone can start to watch it. You see, it started to make sense when people came to the tent and they read it. That was like, man, I like that. I'm like, what do you like about it? There was like the concept of failure is knowledge. You see, you gotta fail so much before you learn. You see, you gotta fail so much before you succeed. You see, many people have failed, yet many people are not talking about their failures. I tell you this, when I start to recognize that the secret was out of the closet, people are able to see the secret. People are able to see the best kept secret and start to ask questions like, man, this concept is good. Or they start to make statements. This concept is good. Then I start to ask questions. What do you mean by that? What do you mean by that? You see, when you're the best kept secret, check this out. When you're the best kept secret, no one is coming to learn from you. Hold on. Let me hold on. When you're the best kept secret, no one is seeking your guidance. When you're the best kept secret, it's hard to get customers. Why? Because now you have to do the traditional way of doing business, which it works. Not to say that it doesn't work. It absolutely works. Because I remember I gave a presentation. I was like, you see all these billboards here. A lot of people don't even understand the importance behind the billboards. And then the feedback that I got from that, I was like, well, it's obviously working. Because if it wasn't working, people wouldn't be doing it. I said, good point. Great point. Good point. Okay. When you focus on a problem, you learn how to discover the best kept secret. It's not the fact that it's more so that it's a secret because a lot of people don't know about it. It's more so you're not telling your secret. It's more so you're not building that brand. It's more so you're not making that impact. You see, the more impact you have, the more customers you can get. When I start to recognize that, I'm like, hey, man, people start reaching out to me from different parts of the world to get onto the podcast. I'm like, bro, how y'all finding me? Like, how do y'all find where I'm at? Where are y'all finding me at? They tell me sometimes Google, sometimes Pod Match, Pod Pitch, all these different places. I'm like, okay, it must be working. Because if it's working, I want it to keep working. If it's working, I want more people to learn about the best kept secret. If it's working, I need to continue to build my brand. That's when I understood. I was like, hold on. Not only am I helping real estate developers build their brand through podcasting, I'm building my brand through podcasting. So when I start to work with you, you start to understand that it's working because it's working for him. If it's working for him, it can work for me. You see, focus on a problem to solve is focusing on a problem that you have. Focus on a problem that you struggle with, and focus on a problem that you have overcame. In business, focusing on a problem helps you solve many people problem that you solve. Hold on. See, the tent right here is what's so important, because when you see the tent, it's no longer a secret. But if it was stored away, it's the best kept secret because people can't say, I like this concept. Hold on. See, what we're going to do now, we're going to go to point number 3, and I'm going to recap point number 1 and 2, then go to 3. So, point number 3 is this, okay? You have to be patient with your problem that you are solving. You have to be patient with your problem that you're solving. And we just recap. We just talked about remove all problems. In other words, find something to solve. The next point we talked about was evaluate if it's a problem by going out and asking problems and asking if it's the best kept secret. Or it's the best kept secret, but going out to see if this problem is what everyone else is struggling with. The last point we're going to talk about is that you have to be patient with your problem. Hello. Be patient with your problem that you're solving. There we go. Be patient with the problem that you're solving. Okay. There's a photo that I have, but I don't have it around me right now. And it's called a business model canvas. And in this business model canvas, you learn how to put your ideas onto paper and see why is the idea, what's working, what's not working, how to make it work. Excuse me. As I did this, so I have one page. It looked like this. Hold on. It looked like this. Business model canvas look like this. It's a big paper. It's like cut in half right here. Cut in half. And it has different boxes, okay? Different boxes. 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 And then different boxes. So this right here is called a business model canvas. And with this business model canvas, you're able to, let's just say, ideal dump. In other words, put your ideals onto paper. Put ideals onto paper. And when I first learned about this, it gave me a different perspective because the perspective that I had was that I thought I needed to write a whole business plan. I don't even know how to write a business plan. I don't even know anything of that stature. Like I don't know how to do that. But when I learned about the business model canvas, it literally gives you a piece of paper and it say, hey, if it's an idea, put it onto paper, have your sticky notes, so that way you can see if it's a good idea, if it's a good problem to solve, or do you just need to keep changing? I saw that, and I start to implement the lessons, I start to implement everything, and what I recognized during that time, I was like, this is different. Because this whole time, I thought I was doing business, yet the business that I was doing was unsure. I was able to see it on paper, and I took some of the sticky notes off, replaced them, put it on top of whatever the case is. I wish I had it right here beside me. I literally show it, but I don't. Anywho, it's like, what is this for? You have to learn how to pivot. As you are pivoting, you have to be patient with the changes. I learned that pivoting demonstrates growth. I've learned pivoting demonstrates focus. I've learned pivoting demonstrates you trying to figure it out. You don't know everything. And when you learn everything, you recognize you don't know everything. There's still a lot more to learn. Okay. With the business model canvas, you're able to put your ideas onto paper. As your ideas are on paper, let me come back to the screen. As your ideas are on paper, boom, 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 boom. Your ideas, watch this. Your ideas, right underneath it, come to life. To be patient with the problem that you are solving, you have to take your ideas off of paper and go outside to learn how to implement them. I'm in another business course, and they talked about that. That was like, get out of the office. It's the program called VMT. I forgot what it stands for. They said, get out of the office and go talk to your future customers. As you go talk to your customers, get out of the office. It's different to get a response from people in person rather than through email, text, phone call. And what they explain is that you can see people reaction. You can see people like their eye pupils, their excitement. Does it make sense? Does it not make sense? I give you a prime example. I was going to speak at the Keystone Prep Academy here in Tampa, Florida. When I was going to speak there, we had like an initial conversation, and he asked me, he was like, so what do you do? I'm like, great question. During that time, it was helping culture build helping culture build leadership through podcasting. And he looked at me. Didn't say anything, but he asked the next question. That alone was like, hey man, I got to figure it out again. I got to change again, because that obviously did not make sense. What does that even mean? Helping cultures build leadership through podcasting? Like, what? You have to be patient with yourself, because the more you change, the more you start to understand. Every time I'm doing something, I'm learning how to become better. Every time I'm doing something, I'm learning how to improve. Every time I learn a problem, I focus on the problem I'm trying to solve. It's always been around podcasting, but to get the language down has taken a lot of time. Real estate developers, brand development through podcasting. Who do I serve? Real estate development. What do I do? Brand development. How do I do it? Podcasting. Why is that? Why am I saying it like that? Because in business, there's a saying that says, I help X by Y. I help X by doing blank, X, Y, Z, or something like that. Something like that. I think it's like that. I help blank do blank blah. Oh no, it's do blank. Hold on. Let me write that. Hold on. Now it makes sense. I help blank X do Y. Hello, Y by Z. I help real estate developers build their brand through podcasting. And this is a longer version of that. Why am I saying that? I've had to change my business models. Hold on. Why am I saying that? I've had to change my business model so many different times. And to get to where I'm at today, it took a long time. Why am I sharing that? You have to be patient with your discovery. You have to be patient with yourself, and you have to be patient with the problem that you're solving. Focusing on a problem doesn't mean you're going to figure out the problem that you're solving instantly. What it means is that you have to learn the language, learn how to communicate it, learn how to present it, learn if it makes sense. You have to go through the process of discovery. As you go through the process of discovery, you start to learn the problem that you're solving. Focus on a problem will help you solve a problem consistently. Hold on. When you focus on a problem, it will help you solve the problem consistently. There we go. You have to recognize that every problem has a solution, but if you're trying to discover every solution for every problem, you won't be in business. On the contrary, if you focus on a problem, if you focus on a solution, you will be in business because that problem is the same. I'll leave with this. I had a mentorship call a couple of weeks ago, and he said that he made X amount of revenue and then went from this revenue to that revenue. And I'm like, how? How in the world did you do that? I said, did you change your product? Did you increase your price? How in the world did you go from this amount to that amount? It was like a drastic increase. He said this day, and I will never forget it. I focused on a problem, for a specific customer and we solved it consistently. I'm like, what the mess? You literally solved that problem like that and you did that? It blew my mind. It blew my mind. It blew my mind because he said it so simple. He said it so simple and I'm like, oh, you understand the problem that you're solving. Because then he proceeded to say this. When you solve the problem once, you just keep solving it because it's already been solved. What? You're telling me it's that simple? So many lessons. But when you focus on a problem, you learn the lessons and how to apply for your business. So just to recap, today we talked about why focus on a problem is key in business. Point number one is that we talked about is to remove all problems. When you remove all problems, you are finding something to solve. Once you find something to solve, you evaluate if it's a problem to solve, which means you go out and ask questions. You go out and get feedback. You go out and put your secret out. When you're the best kept secret, no one knows about you. But when you get out there, people start to learn about you. Last thing that we talked about is that you have to be patient with the problem that you're solving. You're going to be changing. You're going to be evolving. You're going to be growing. And as you're changing, evolving, and growing, you're learning the business that you're in. You're learning the problem that you're solving, but you have to be patient with yourself. As you are patient, just know you're learning what you're doing. So this has been great. Let me know your biggest takeaway on the problem you are going to solve. I love to read it, love to interact with it. In addition to that, before we get off, failure, don't be afraid to fail because failure is knowledge and you're only one failure away from changing your life. I appreciate y'all. Hit that follow button, hit that subscribe, and just know that when you focus on a problem, you are in business because that problem can be solved consistently. Oh, that was hard. That was hard.